The morning sun filtered through the kitchen window as Camilla Martinez poured coffee into two matching blue mugs. She had bought them 5 years ago when she and her sister Elena first moved into their shared apartment. The ritual of making coffee for both of them had become as natural as breathing. Elena always liked hers with 2 sugars and a splash of milk, while Camilla preferred hers black and strong. "Elena, your coffee's getting cold," Camilla called out, checking the clock on the microwave. It was already 7:30, and Elena's shift at the children's hospital started at 8. Elena worked as a pediatric nurse, spending her days caring for sick children with the same gentle touch she had used to bandage Camilla's scraped knees when they were little. Silence echoed from Elena's bedroom. Camilla frowned and walked down the narrow hallway, her bare feet silent on the hardwood floor. She knocked gently on Elena's door. "Elena, you're going to be late for work." Still no answer. A strange feeling settled in Camilla's stomach, the kind of unease she used to get as a child before thunderstorms. She turned the door handle slowly and peered inside. Elena was still in bed, her dark hair spread across the pillow like spilled ink. But something was wrong. Very wrong. Elena lay too still, her breathing shallow and labored. Her usually olive skin had a grayish tint, and there were beads of sweat on her forehead despite the cool morning air. "Elena." Camilla rushed to the bedside, her heart hammering against her ribs. She shook her sister's shoulder gently at first, then more firmly. Elena's eyes fluttered open, but they looked distant and unfocused. "Camilla." Elena's voice was barely a whisper, weak and strained. "I don't feel good. My chest, it hurts so much." Fear shot through Camilla like ice water. Elena was only 28, just 2 years younger than Camilla. She was healthy, active, always the one taking care of others. Seeing her like this felt like the world had suddenly turned upside down. "I'm calling 911, Camilla said, reaching for her phone with trembling hands. But Elena grabbed her wrist with surprising strength for someone who looked so weak. "No, maybe it's just a flu. I don't want to make a fuss. You know how expensive ambulances are." Elena tried to sit up, but immediately fell back against the pillows, wincing in pain. Camilla had always been the practical sister, the one who thought things through and made careful decisions. But looking at Elena's pale face and hearing her labored breathing, practicality flew out the window. She dialed 911 without another thought. 911, what's your emergency?" "My sister, she's really sick. She can barely breathe, and her chest hurts. Something's very wrong." Camilla's voice shook as she gave their address to the dispatcher. The next 20 minutes felt like 20 hours. Camilla held Elena's hand, trying to keep her awake and talking while they waited for the ambulance. Elena drifted in and out of consciousness, sometimes mumbling about work, about the children she was supposed to care for that day. "The kids. I need to check on little Marcus. He was scared about his surgery today," Elena whispered, her eyes closed. "Don't worry about work right now. Just focus on breathing," Camilla said, though her own breathing was coming in short, panicked bursts. When the paramedics finally arrived, they moved with efficient urgency that somehow made everything feel more real and more terrifying. They asked rapid-fire questions while checking Elena's vital signs and hooking her up to various machines. "How long has she been like this? Does she have any medical conditions? Is she on any medications? Any family history of heart problems?" Heart problems. The words hit Camilla like a physical blow. Their father had died of a heart attack when Elena was just 16 and Camilla was 18. They had been told that genetics played a role in heart disease, but Elena was so young, so healthy. It couldn't be the same thing. "We need to get her to the hospital now," one of the paramedics said. They loaded Elena onto a stretcher, and she looked so small and fragile strapped to the white sheets. Camilla followed the ambulance in her car, her hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles turned white. She found herself making bargains with a God she wasn't sure she believed in. If Elena was okay, she would be a better sister. She would tell Elena she loved her more often. She would stop taking their daily conversations for granted. At the hospital, everything became a blur of bright lights, urgent voices, and medical equipment. Elena was rushed into the emergency room, while Camilla was left to sit in the waiting room, filling out forms with shaking hands. Insurance information, medical history, emergency contacts. The forms seemed endless and pointless when all she wanted to know was whether her sister was going to be okay. Hours passed. Camilla called their mother in Mexico, trying to explain the situation in Spanish while her voice broke with emotion. Their mother, Maria, immediately said she would try to find a way to come to the United States, but they both knew it would be complicated and expensive. "Pray for her, Mija," Maria said through tears. "Pray for our Elena." Dr. Sarah Chan finally came to speak with Camilla in the late afternoon. She was a woman in her 40s with kind eyes and a gentle manner, but her expression was serious. "Ms. Martinez, I'm Dr. Chun, the cardiologist treating your sister. I need to talk to you about Elena's condition." Camilla's mouth went dry. Is she going to be okay? "Your sister has suffered what we call a massive myocardial infarction, a very serious heart attack. The damage to her heart muscle is significant." Dr. Chun spoke slowly, making sure Camilla understood each word. "But she's only 28. How is that possible? Sometimes heart attacks affect young people, especially when there's a family history. Elena told us your father died of a heart attack. There's also a condition called familial hypercholesterolemia that can run in families. We're running tests to determine the exact cause." The medical terms swirled around Camilla's head like alphabet soup. All she could focus on was the word massive and the serious look in Dr. Chen's eyes. "What happens now?" "We've performed emergency surgery to open the blocked artery, and we're monitoring her closely in the cardiac intensive care unit. The next 24 to 48 hours are critical. Her heart was without oxygen for a significant period, and we need to see how well it recovers." Dr. Chen paused, choosing her words carefully. "I want you to understand that this is a very serious situation. Elena is fighting for her life right now. We're doing everything we can, but I think you should contact any other family members who would want to be here." The words hit Camilla like a sledgehammer. Fighting for her life. The phrase echoed in her mind as Dr. Chun continued talking about treatments and procedures and monitoring. All Camilla could think about was Elena's laugh, the way she hummed while making breakfast, how she always remembered to call on Camilla's birthday, even when she was working a double shift. "Can I see her?" "Yes, but only for a few minutes at a time. She's heavily sedated and connected to several machines. It might be difficult to see her like that." Nothing could have prepared Camilla for what she saw when she walked into the cardiac ICU. Elena lay unconscious in a narrow hospital bed, surrounded by machines that beeped and hummed and displayed numbers that meant nothing to Camilla, but everything to the doctors and nurses who checked them constantly. Tubes ran from Elena's nose and mouth. Wires connected her chest to monitors that showed the irregular rhythm of her damaged heart. Her face was puffy and pale, and her hands felt cold when Camilla took one in both of hers. "Hey, little sister," Camilla whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I'm here. You need to get better, okay? You have to get better because I can't do this without you." Elena didn't respond, didn't move except for the mechanical rise and fall of her chest as the ventilator breathed for her. Camilla stayed by Elena's bedside through the night, dozing fitfully in an uncomfortable chair. Nurses came and went, checking monitors, adjusting medications, speaking in hushed tones. Dr. Chin stopped by several times, each visit making Camilla's heart race with fear of what she might say. "How was she doing?" Camilla asked during one of these visits. "Her heart rhythm is still very unstable. We're giving her medications to try to strengthen the remaining healthy heart muscle, but it's going to be a long process. Even if she recovers, she'll likely need extensive rehabilitation and lifestyle changes." The word "if" hung in the air between them like a dark cloud. If she recovers. Not when, but if. As dawn broke through the hospital windows, casting long shadows across Elena's motionless form, Camilla found herself thinking about all the conversations they would never have if Elena didn't make it. All the birthdays and holidays, the inside jokes, and shared memories that would die with her. She thought about how Elena had helped her through her divorce 2 years ago, how she had shown up at Camilla's apartment with ice cream and tissues and stayed up all night listening to her cry. She thought about Elena's dreams of becoming a head nurse someday, maybe even going back to school to become a nurse practitioner. "You have so much left to do," Camilla whispered to her sister. "So many kids at the hospital who need you. Remember little Sarah in room 204? She asked for you specifically because you're the only nurse who knows how to braid her hair just the way she likes it." But Elena remained still and silent, fighting a battle that Camilla couldn't fight for her. The guilt began creeping in sometime during the second day. Camilla found herself thinking about their family history, about the genetic test their doctor had recommended years ago after their father's death. Elena had wanted to get tested to see if they carried the gene for familial hypercholesterolemia, but Camilla had talked her out of it. "What's the point?" Camilla had said. "Either we have it or we don't. Knowing won't change anything, and the test is expensive. But knowing might have changed everything. If Elena had tested positive, she would have been on medication to lower her cholesterol. She would have been monitored more closely. The heart attack might have been prevented entirely." The more Camilla thought about it, the more the guilt consumed her. She should have insisted on the genetic testing. She should have paid for it herself if money was the issue. She should have taken better care of her little sister. On the third day, Elena's condition worsened. Her heart rhythm became even more erratic, and Dr. Chun had to perform another emergency procedure to try to stabilize her. "We're doing everything we can," Dr. Chun assured Camilla afterward, but her eyes looked tired and worried. Camilla's mother finally arrived that evening, having borrowed money from relatives to pay for the flight. Maria Martinez was a small woman with work-worn hands and Elena's same dark eyes, now red from crying. She held Camilla close in the hospital corridor, and for a moment, Camilla felt like a little girl again, safe in her mother's arms. But the safety was an illusion. Nothing about this situation was safe or predictable or fair. "How could this happen to our Elena?" Maria whispered in Spanish. "She's always been so good, so caring. She's devoted her life to helping others." Camilla didn't have an answer. Life wasn't fair, and good people got sick, and sometimes there was no explanation that made sense. All she could do was hold her mother's hand and watch Elena fight for every breath. As the days passed, Camilla barely left the hospital. She slept in the waiting room, survived on vending machine food and bad coffee, and ignored the concerned phone calls from her job. Nothing mattered except being there when Elena woke up, because she had to wake up. The alternative was unthinkable. But as Elena entered her second week in the ICU with little improvement, Dr. Chen's conversations with the family became more serious, more focused on preparing them for different possible outcomes. The damage to Elena's heart was extensive. Even if she survived, she might need a heart transplant eventually. She might never be able to work as a nurse again. She might not be able to live independently. "We need to discuss Elena's wishes," Dr. Chun said gently during one of these meetings. "Has she ever talked to you about what she would want if she couldn't recover?" The question felt like a knife through Camilla's heart. Elena had always been focused on living, on helping others live. They had never talked about dying because Elena was young and healthy and supposed to outlive everyone else. "She would want to fight," Camilla said firmly. "Elena never gives up on anything. She wouldn't give up on this either." But privately, watching her sister's still form connected to machines that were keeping her alive, Camilla began to wonder if she was fighting for Elena's recovery or for her own inability to let go. The guilt grew stronger with each passing day. If Camilla had insisted on the genetic testing, Elena would still be at work, still be taking care of sick children, still be making coffee in their kitchen every morning. The what-ifs tortured Camilla during the long nights in the hospital chair. What if she had paid closer attention to Elena's health? What if she had noticed signs of heart disease earlier? What if she had been a better sister, more protective, more caring? The questions had no answers, but they echoed in Camilla's mind like a broken record, each repetition making the guilt heavier and harder to bear. Elena had always been the caregiver, even as a child. When their father died, Elena had comforted Camilla even though she was younger and hurting just as much. When Camilla's marriage fell apart, Elena had been her rock, her constant support. Now Elena needed someone to care for her, and all Camilla could do was sit by her bedside and watch machines keep her alive. The role reversal felt wrong and terrifying. Camilla had always been the big sister in age, but Elena had been the strong one emotionally. She was the one who knew how to comfort people, how to make everything seem like it would be okay, even when it wasn't. Without Elena's reassurance, without her optimistic smile and gentle voice saying everything would work out, Camilla felt lost and helpless in ways she hadn't experienced since childhood. As the second week in the ICU drew to a close, Camilla found herself making a decision that would haunt her forever. She decided to get the genetic test that Elena had wanted years ago. If she was positive for the familial hypercholesterolemia gene, it would confirm what she already suspected, that Elena's heart attack could have been prevented if they had known about the genetic risk earlier. The test results would take a few days to come back, but Camilla already knew what they would show. The guilt in her heart was answer enough. The genetic test results arrived on a Tuesday morning, delivered by Dr. Martinez, the genetics counselor who had drawn Camilla's blood 3 days earlier. Camilla sat in a small consultation room at the hospital, her hands folded tightly in her lap as Dr. Martinez opened the manila envelope that contained her future. "The test is positive, Camilla," Dr. Martinez said gently. "You do carry the gene for familial hypercholesterolemia. This means there was a 50% chance that Elena also carried it." The words confirmed what Camilla's heart had already known, but hearing them spoken aloud felt like being punched in the stomach. She stared at the test results, at the scientific notation, and genetic markers that spelled out her worst fears in black and white. "If we had known," Camilla whispered, "Elena could have been on medication. She could have been monitored. This might never have happened." Dr. Martinez nodded sympathetically. Early intervention can significantly reduce the risk of cardiac events in people with this condition. "But, Camilla, you can't blame yourself for not knowing something that required genetic testing to discover." But Camilla could blame herself, and she did. The guilt that had been growing inside her for 2 weeks suddenly exploded into something much larger and more consuming. It wasn't just guilt anymore. It was a crushing sense of responsibility for Elena's condition. She walked back to the ICU in a daze, the test results clutched in her hand like evidence of her failure as a sister. Elena remained unconscious, surrounded by the same machines that had become the soundtrack to Camilla's nightmares. The steady beep of the heart monitor, the whoosh of the ventilator, the occasional alarm that sent nurses rushing to check various readings. "I got the test results back," Camilla said to Elena's still form, even though the doctors had told her that deeply sedated patients might not be able to hear. "You were right, little sister. We should have done this years ago. I should have listened to you." Elena's face remained peaceful and unchanged, but the heart monitor showed the irregular rhythm that had become all too familiar. Her heart was still fighting, still trying to beat normally despite the massive damage it had sustained. Dr. Chin stopped by during her evening rounds, carrying Elena's latest test results and wearing the same concerned expression she had worn for weeks. "How is she doing today?" Camilla asked, though she dreaded the answer. "Her kidney function is starting to decline," Dr. Chen said quietly. "When the heart can't pump effectively, it affects other organs. We're adjusting her medications, but it's concerning." Each day seemed to bring new complications, new problems caused by Elena's damaged heart. First it was irregular rhythms, then fluid buildup in her lungs, and now her kidneys were beginning to fail. It felt like watching dominoes fall in slow motion, each organ system affected by the failure of Elena's heart to do its job. Camilla's mother had returned to Mexico after the first week, unable to afford a longer stay and needing to get back to work to pay for the plane ticket she had borrowed money to buy. This left Camilla alone with Elena, alone with the beeping machines and the antiseptic smell and the constant fear. "I'm sorry, Mama," Camilla whispered to Elena during one of the long nights. "I'm sorry I didn't take better care of you. You always took care of everyone else. The kids at the hospital, me when I was going through the divorce, Mama when Papa died. But I didn't take care of you when you needed it most." The night nurse, a kind woman named Patricia who had been caring for Elena since she arrived, often found Camilla talking to her sister during the quiet hours. "She can probably hear you," Patricia said one night as she checked Elena's 4 lines. "Studies show that hearing is often the last sense to go. Keep talking to her." So Camilla did talk. She told Elena about everything happening outside the hospital walls. How her job had given her family leave, how their neighbors were asking about Elena, how the children at the pediatric ward kept asking when Elena would come back to work. "Little Marcus had his surgery," Camilla told Elena one evening. "His mother said he kept asking for the nurse with the pretty braids who promised to be there when he woke up. Patricia told me he cried because you weren't there." The thought of the children Elena cared for missing her and needing her made Camilla's chest tighten with emotion. Elena lived for those children, for making their hospital stays a little less scary, a little more bearable. She had a gift for knowing exactly what each child needed, whether it was a funny joke, a gentle song, or just someone to hold their hand during a frightening procedure. "Room 208 is asking for you too," Camilla continued. "The little girl with leukemia, Sophia. She told her mother that you're the only nurse who reads stories with all the different voices for the characters. Her mother asked if you might visit when you get better. When you get better." The words came automatically, but they felt increasingly hollow as the days passed. Dr. Chin's conversations with Camilla were becoming more serious, more focused on Elena's declining condition rather than her potential recovery. "We need to discuss Elena's prognosis more honestly," Dr. Chan said during their meeting on Friday of the 3rd week. "Her heart function is not improving, and now with the kidney involvement, we're looking at multi-organ failure." Multi-organ failure. The words sounded clinical and distant, like something that happened to other people in medical textbooks. They didn't sound like something that could happen to Elena, who had always been so vibrant and alive. "What does that mean exactly?" Camilla asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know. "It means that Elena is very, very sick. Her body is struggling to function even with all the support we're providing. We need to start thinking about what Elena would want if she doesn't improve." The conversation Camilla had been avoiding for 3 weeks had finally arrived. Dr. Chan spoke gently about quality of life, about the difference between prolonging life and prolonging dying, about letting go when medical interventions were no longer helping. "I need to ask you some difficult questions," Dr. Chin continued. "Has Elena ever expressed wishes about life support? About what she would want if she couldn't recover?" Camilla tried to think back to any conversations she and Elena might have had about such things, but came up empty. Elena was 28 years old. People that age didn't usually spend time thinking about dying, about what they would want if they ended up on life support in a hospital bed. She never talked about it. Camilla said finally, "But I know Elena. She's a fighter. She would want us to keep trying." Dr. Chin nodded understandingly. "Many families feel that way. But I want you to think about what fighting means. Is it fighting to keep Elena alive at all costs, even if she can never wake up, never breathe on her own, never be the person she was? Or is fighting sometimes knowing when to let go?" The question haunted Camilla for days. She found herself studying Elena's face, looking for any sign of awareness, any indication of what Elena would want if she could speak for herself. Elena had always been decisive and practical despite her gentle nature. She was the sister who knew exactly what she wanted to order at restaurants, while Camilla spent 10 minutes agonizing over the menu. She was the one who had chosen her career path in nursing without ever wavering or second-guessing herself. But what would Elena choose about this? Would she want to live connected to machines, unable to care for the children she loved, unable to laugh or sing or braid hair or comfort scared little patients? The thought of making such a decision for Elena felt impossible and wrong. Camilla wasn't qualified to decide whether her sister lived or died. She was just a big sister who had failed to protect Elena when she needed it most. "I don't know what to do," Camilla confided to Patricia during one of the night shifts. "How do you decide something like that for someone else?" Patricia had been a nurse for 20 years and had seen families struggle with these decisions many times. She sat down in the chair next to Camilla and spoke quietly so as not to disturb other patients. "What was Elena like before all this?" Patricia asked. "What made her happy? What was important to her?" "Taking care of people," Camilla answered without hesitation. Elena lived to help others. She worked overtime constantly because she couldn't stand the thought of sick children not getting the care they needed. She volunteered at free health clinics on her days off. She sent money to our mother every month, even though she barely made enough to pay her own bills. "And now?" Patricia asked gently. Now Elena couldn't help anyone. She couldn't comfort scared children or ease their pain or make them laugh. She couldn't send money to their mother or volunteer clinics or do any of the things that had given her life meaning and purpose. "I keep thinking she might wake up," Camilla said. "That maybe tomorrow will be different." "Hope is important," Patricia said. "But sometimes the kindest thing we can do for someone we love is to let them go when their body is ready to stop fighting." That night, Camilla called her mother in Mexico to discuss Elena's condition and what they should do. Maria Martinez cried as Camilla explained what the doctors had said about multi-organ failure and life support decisions. "What does your heart tell you, Mija?" Maria asked through her tears. "You know Elena better than anyone." "My heart wants her to get better and come home and make coffee in our kitchen every morning," Camilla said honestly. "But my head knows that might not happen." "Elena always said she wanted to help people," Maria said quietly. "Even as a little girl, she was always trying to fix broken things, to take care of hurt animals. Maybe helping people means something different now." After hanging up with her mother, Camilla sat by Elena's bedside and really looked at her sister. Elena's face was puffy from fluid retention, and her skin had a grayish color that hadn't improved in days. The machines were breathing for her, filtering her blood, monitoring her heart. Without them, Elena would die within minutes. Was this living, or was this just existing? Was this what Elena would want for herself? Camilla thought about all the conversations she'd had with Elena over the years about their work, their dreams, their values. Elena had always talked about dignity and quality of life when discussing her patients. She had cried when elderly patients were kept alive long past the point where they had any quality of life, when families couldn't let go even though the patient was suffering. "The hardest part of this job," Elena had said once after a particularly difficult shift, "is watching families torture someone they love because they can't accept that dying is sometimes a mercy." The memory hit Camilla like a revelation. Elena had spoken about this exact situation, about families who couldn't let go. She had called it torture to keep someone alive when their body was ready to die. But knowing what Elena might want and actually making the decision were two entirely different things. The weight of choosing death for her sister felt unbearable, even if it might be what Elena would choose for herself. Camilla spent the weekend agonizing over the decision. She walked the hospital halls at all hours, unable to sleep, unable to eat, unable to think about anything except whether to continue life support or let Elena go. On Sunday evening, Dr. Chun found her sitting in the hospital chapel, staring at the simple wooden cross on the wall. "How are you doing, Camilla?" Dr. Chun asked, sitting down beside her. "I don't know how to decide," Camilla said honestly. "How you choose death for someone you love?" "You don't choose death," Dr. Chun said gently. "Elena's heart chose that when it stopped working properly. You're choosing whether to accept what her body is telling us or whether to fight against it with machines and medications. What would you do if Elena was your sister?" Dr. Chun was quiet for a long moment. "I would ask myself what Elena valued most in life. And I would ask myself whether keeping her alive on machines honors those values or goes against them. Elena valued helping others, caring for children, being independent and strong. She valued dignity and choice and the ability to make a difference in the world. None of those things were possible while she lay unconscious, connected to machines. If we decide to let her go, Camilla asked quietly, what happens? We would make her as comfortable as possible. Remove the machines gradually. You could hold her hand, talk to her, play music she likes. We would manage her pain and make sure she's peaceful. The thought of Elena dying was devastating, but the thought of Elena being at peace was somehow comforting. She had been fighting for 3 weeks, and her body was tired. Maybe it was time to stop asking her to fight and start letting her rest. Can I have one more night to think about it? Camilla asked. Of course. This is the hardest decision anyone ever has to make. Take all the time you need. That night, Camilla held Elena's hand and told her everything she needed to say. She apologized for not insisting on the genetic testing. She thanked Elena for being the best sister anyone could ask for. She promised to take care of their mother, to get regular heart checkups, to live the kind of life Elena would be proud of. I love you so much, little sister, Camilla whispered. And if you're tired, if you're ready to stop fighting, it's okay. I'll be okay. Mama will be okay. You don't have to keep fighting for us. For just a moment, Camilla thought she felt Elena's hand squeeze hers. It might have been her imagination, or it might have been Elena's way of saying goodbye. Monday morning arrived gray and cold, matching the heaviness in Camilla's heart. She had spent the night in the uncomfortable hospital chair, holding Elena's hand and watching her sister's chest rise and fall with the mechanical rhythm of the ventilator. By dawn, Camilla knew what she had to do. She called her mother first, needing to hear Maria's voice before making the decision that would change everything. Mija, how are you feeling this morning? Maria asked, her voice thick with sleep and worry. Mama, I think it's time to let Elena go. The words came out broken and painful, like shards of glass cutting through her throat. Maria was quiet for so long that Camilla thought the connection had been lost. Finally, she heard her mother's soft crying. I know, Mija. I know. Our Elena is tired. She's been fighting so hard. Will you be able to forgive me? Camilla asked, tears streaming down her face. If I make this choice, and you lose your daughter because of me? Oh, Camilla, you are not losing me, my daughter. This terrible sickness did that. You're giving Elena permission to rest. There is nothing to forgive. After hanging up with her mother, Camilla sat with Elena for another hour, memorizing every detail of her sister's face. The way her eyebrows curved, the small scar on her chin from when she fell off her bike at age 7, the dimple that showed when she smiled. Dr. Chun arrived during her morning rounds, moving quietly into the room with a gentle manner that had become familiar over the past 3 weeks. Good morning, Camilla. Have you had a chance to think about what we discussed? Camilla nodded, not trusting her voice to remain steady. I think Elena would want us to let her go, but I need to know exactly what will happen. I need to understand the process. Dr. Chin sat down in the chair across from Elena's bed and explained everything carefully. They would first remove the ventilator, allowing Elena to breathe on her own, if possible. They would continue pain medication to ensure she remained comfortable. Family members could stay with her throughout the process, which might last anywhere from a few minutes to several hours. We'll do everything we can to make sure Elena is at peace, Dr. Chun assured her. And you don't have to make this decision right now. You could take more time if you need it. But Camilla knew that more time wouldn't make the choice any easier. Elena had been unconscious for 3 weeks with no signs of improvement. Her kidneys were failing, her heart was barely functioning even with maximum medical support, and her brain showed minimal activity on the EEG tests. When would it happen? Camilla asked. We can arrange it for this afternoon if you'd like. That will give you time to contact any other family members or friends who might want to say goodbye. The next few hours passed in a blur of phone calls and preparations. Camilla called Elena's closest friends from work, her nursing school roommates, and a few neighbors who had become like family over the years. She also called Father Miguel from their mother's church, asking him to come provide last rites, even though Elena wasn't particularly religious. Elena would want all the bases covered, Camilla said to herself, trying to smile through her tears as she remembered her sister's practical approach to everything. Elena's closest friend and co-worker, Nurse Sandra Vega, arrived first. Sandra had worked alongside Elena in the pediatric ward for 3 years, and she was devastated to see her vibrant friend lying motionless in the hospital bed. "She looks so small," Sandra whispered, taking Elena's other hand. "She always seemed larger than life at work, you know?" The kids adored her. She could calm down the most frightened child with just her voice. "Tell me about Elena at work," Camilla said, needing to hear stories about her sister's life, about the happiness and purpose that had defined Elena before this tragedy. Sandra smiled through her tears. "There was this one little boy, Marcus, who was terrified of needles. He would scream and fight every time we needed to draw blood or give him medication. But Elena figured out that he loved dinosaurs. So she started telling him stories about brave dinosaur nurses who used tiny needles to help sick baby dinosaurs. She even brought in little plastic dinosaurs from the gift shop to show him. Did it work? Like magic. After that, Marcus would ask for Elena specifically whenever he needed procedures done. He called her Nurse T-Rex because she was brave and strong and could fix anything." Sandra squeezed Elena's hand. She saved that little boy from months of trauma and fear just by taking the time to understand what he needed. More friends and colleagues arrived throughout the morning and early afternoon. Each person shared memories of Elena's kindness, her dedication, her ability to make others feel cared for and valued. Listening to these stories, Camilla felt both pride and devastating sadness. Elena had touched so many lives, had made such a difference in the world. It seemed impossible that someone so vital and loving could be leaving them. Father Miguel arrived around 2 o'clock, carrying a small leather case with the items needed for last rites. He was an elderly priest who had known the Martinez family for years, and he spoke to Elena as if she could hear him. "Elena, my child, you have lived a life of service and love. You have cared for God's children with a tender heart and gentle hands. Now it is time for you to rest and receive the peace you have given to others." The simple ceremony brought comfort to Camilla in ways she hadn't expected. Whether or not Elena could hear the prayers and blessings, they felt important, like a bridge between the life Elena had lived and whatever came next. Dr. Chin returned around 3 o'clock with a team of nurses to begin the process. She explained once more what would happen and asked if Camilla had any final questions or concerns. "Will she feel pain?" Camilla asked, her biggest fear. "No, we'll continue her pain medication throughout the process. Elena won't suffer. Will she know we're here? We believe that hearing is often the last sense to fade. Keep talking to her, tell her you love her. She may be able to hear you even if she can't respond." The room gradually filled with the people who loved Elena most. Sandra held one hand while Camilla held the other. Their neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez, who had babysat the Martinez girls when they were young, stood near Elena's head, gently stroking her hair. Several of Elena's nursing colleagues gathered around the foot of the bed, creating a circle of love and support. "Before we begin," Dr. Chin said quietly, "I want you to know that Elena has been an organ donor since she was 18. Her heart can't be used due to the damage, but her corneas, tissues, and other organs might help several people. Would you like us to proceed with organ donation after she passes?" The question caught Camilla off guard, but the answer came immediately. Yes, Elena would absolutely want that. She always wanted to help people. Dr. Chin nodded and made a note in Elena's chart. "The organ donation team will coordinate everything. You don't need to worry about any of the details." At 3:30, Dr. Chun began the process of removing life support. First, she gradually reduced the settings on the ventilator, allowing Elena's own breathing reflexes to take over. For several minutes, Elena continued to breathe on her own, though the breaths were shallow and irregular. "She's breathing," Camilla whispered in amazement. "She's actually breathing on her own." But Dr. Chun had warned them that this didn't necessarily mean Elena was conscious or that her condition was improving. The brainstem could continue controlling basic functions like breathing even when higher brain functions were severely damaged. After 10 minutes, Elena's breathing became more labored and irregular. Dr. Chin carefully removed the ventilator tube, and Elena's breathing became quieter but continued. "Elena," Camilla whispered close to her sister's ear, "we're all here with you. Sandra is here, and Mrs. Rodriguez, and Father Miguel. You're not alone. We love you so much." Elena's face looked peaceful, no longer puffy from the mechanical ventilation. For the first time in weeks, she looked like herself again, like the vibrant young woman who had made coffee every morning and hummed while getting ready for work. "Remember when we were little and you used to have nightmares?" Camilla continued talking, her voice soft and steady despite her tears. "You would come to my room, and I would tell you stories until you fell asleep. You always wanted to hear about the brave princess who saved everyone else instead of waiting to be rescued." Sandra picked up the thread, adding her own memories. "Elena, remember the little girl in room 203 last month? She was so scared about her surgery, and you stayed with her all night, reading her favorite book over and over. Her mother told me later that you were the reason she felt brave enough to go through with the operation." For nearly an hour, Elena's friends and family shared memories and spoke words of love. Elena's breathing gradually became slower and more peaceful, like someone settling into a deep, comfortable sleep. "The children at the hospital are going to miss you so much," Sandra whispered. "But we'll tell them stories about you. We'll make sure they know about the nurse who loved them enough to learn about dinosaurs and fairy tales and video games, just so she could make them feel less scared." Mrs. Rodriguez, who had been quietly praying in Spanish, leaned down to kiss Elena's forehead. "Rest now, little one. You have given so much love to this world. It's time for you to receive peace." At 4:45, Elena's breathing became very shallow and far apart. Dr. Chun checked her pulse and listened to her heart, then looked at Camilla with gentle eyes. "It won't be much longer now," she said quietly. Camilla leaned close to Elena's ear one final time. "It's okay, little sister. You can let go. I'll take care of Mama, I promise. I'll get my heart checked regularly. I'll live a life you'd be proud of. And I'll never, ever forget how much you loved everyone around you." Elena took 3 more breaths, each one softer than the last. At 4:58, her breathing stopped completely. Dr. Chan waited several minutes, then gently checked for a pulse and listened for a heartbeat. At 5:04 on Monday afternoon, she pronounced Elena Martinez dead. The room fell silent except for the quiet sounds of crying. For 3 weeks, Elena's hospital room had been filled with the noise of machines, beeping monitors, whooshing ventilators, humming pumps. Now, there was only silence and the overwhelming presence of loss. But there's also something else, something Camilla couldn't quite name. Peace, maybe. Relief that Elena's suffering was over. A sense that her sister was finally free from the damaged body that had been keeping her trapped for weeks. "She looks peaceful," Sandra said softly. And it was true. Elena's face had relaxed into an expression of calm that she hadn't worn since before the heart attack. The lines of pain and struggle were gone, replaced by something that looked almost like contentment. Dr. Chan gave them as much time as they needed to say their final goodbyes. One by one, Elena's friends and colleagues kissed her forehead or held her hand and whispered their own private words of farewell. When it was time to leave, Camilla was reluctant to let go of Elena's hand. For 3 weeks, that hand had been her connection to her sister, her hope that Elena might squeeze back someday. Releasing it felt like severing the last physical tie between them. "She's not really gone," Mrs. Rodriguez said gently, helping Camilla to her feet. "Elena is in every child she comforted, every person she helped, every life she touched. That kind of love doesn't die." As they walked out of the ICU, Camilla turned back for one last look at the room that had been their world for 3 weeks. Elena's body remained peaceful under a white sheet, but the machines that had dominated the space for so long stood silent and empty. Tomorrow, the organ donation team would harvest Elena's corneas and tissues to help other people see and heal. Her death would give life and hope to strangers, which seemed fitting for someone who had devoted her entire adult life to caring for others. But tonight, Camilla had to figure out how to live in a world without her sister, how to go home to their shared apartment and face Elena's empty coffee mug, her unmade bed, the scrubs hanging in her closet ready for a shift she would never work. The guilt that had consumed Camilla for weeks was still there, but it was joined now by something else. A fierce determination to honor Elena's memory by living the kind of life Elena would have wanted for her. She would get regular cardiac checkups. She would take care of their mother. She would find ways to help others, maybe even volunteer with the children Elena had loved so much. Elena's death wasn't fair or logical or understandable, but her life had been beautiful and meaningful, full of love and service and joy. That had to count for something. That had to matter. As Camilla walked through the hospital parking lot toward her car, she felt the weight of Elena's loss settling into her bones like a permanent ache. But she also felt something she hadn't experienced in weeks, a sense of purpose. Elena's story wasn't over. It would continue in the lives of everyone she had touched, everyone she had loved, everyone who would remember her kindness and try to pass it on to others. Camilla would make sure of that. The apartment felt like a museum when Camilla finally returned home late Monday evening. Everything remained exactly as Elena had left it 3 weeks ago. Her coffee mug still sitting in the sink, her reading glasses on the kitchen counter, her favorite sweater draped over the back of the couch. The normalcy of these everyday objects felt surreal after watching Elena die in a sterile hospital room. Camilla stood in the doorway of Elena's bedroom, unable to cross the threshold. The bed was still unmade from that terrible morning when Elena couldn't breathe, when Camilla had found her sister gray and sweating and fighting for air. The memory of that moment felt like a physical blow to Camilla's chest. She closed Elena's door and retreated to her own room, where she called her mother to tell her that Elena had passed peacefully that afternoon. She wasn't alone, Camilla assured Maria through both their tears. All her friends from work were there, and Mrs. Rodriguez and Father Miguel gave her last rites. She knew she was loved. Thank God for that, Maria whispered. Thank God she had you with her. A person shouldn't die alone. They talked for an hour about funeral arrangements, about bringing Elena's body back to Mexico to be buried next to their father, about how to pay for transportation and services when neither of them had much money. These practical discussions felt simultaneously important and completely meaningless. Elena was gone. Nothing else really mattered. The next few days passed in a haze of arrangements and condolences. Elena's colleagues organized a memorial service at the hospital, and Camilla was amazed at how many people came to honor her sister's memory. The hospital chapel was packed with nurses, doctors, and support staff who had worked with Elena. But what touched Camilla most deeply were the parents and even some of the children who had been Elena's patients. A woman named Jennifer Martinez approached Camilla after the service. She was holding the hand of a small boy who looked to be about 6 years old. "Are you Elena's sister?" Jennifer asked, and when Camilla nodded, she continued with tears in her eyes. "This is my son Marcus. Elena was his nurse when he had his appendix surgery last year." Camilla looked down at the little boy, remembering Sandra's story about Elena and the dinosaur-loving child who had been afraid of needles. "Marcus wanted to give you something," Jennifer said, helping her son step forward. Marcus held up a small plastic T-Rex, the same kind Elena had used to comfort him during his hospital stay. Nurse Elena said brave dinosaurs help sick babies get better. She was the bravest dinosaur nurse. "I want you to have this, so you can remember she was brave." Camilla knelt down to Marcus's eye level, accepting the small toy with shaking hands. "Thank you, Marcus. Elena would love knowing that you remembered her. Is she still helping sick kids in heaven?" Marcus asked with the direct curiosity of childhood. "I think she is," Camilla replied, meaning it. "I think wherever Elena is now, she's still finding ways to help people feel better." Story after story emerged during the memorial service. A teenage patient talked about how Elena had stayed past her shift to help her practice walking with crutches. A mother described how Elena had held her premature baby for hours during a difficult night, singing softly until both mother and child could rest. Colleagues remembered Elena's infectious laugh, her willingness to cover extra shifts when coworkers needed time off, her habit of bringing homemade cookies to share with the staff. Elena saw every child as precious, said Dr. Patricia Williams, the head of pediatrics. She never treated her young patients as just cases or diagnoses. To Elena, each child was someone's whole world, and she cared for them with that understanding. Listening to these tributes, Camilla felt a complex mix of pride and devastation. Elena had lived such a meaningful life, had touched so many people in positive ways. The impact of her death rippled far beyond just family. An entire community of children, parents, and healthcare workers were mourning the loss of someone special. But with that recognition came a crushing wave of guilt that knocked Camilla to her knees emotionally. If she had insisted on the genetic testing years ago, Elena would still be alive to care for those children. She would still be bringing cookies to work and staying late to comfort scared patients and making their shared apartment feel like home. After the memorial service, Camilla drove to the cemetery where Elena would eventually be buried, once arrangements were finalized to transport her body to Mexico. She sat on a bench overlooking the peaceful grounds and, finally, allowed herself to fully feel the weight of her responsibility for Elena's death. The genetic test results were like evidence of her failure, scientific proof that Elena's heart attack could have been prevented if Camilla had been a better sister, if she had paid attention to their family history, if she had prioritized Elena's health over the cost of genetic testing, if she had been more protective, more caring, more aware. "It should have been me," Camilla whispered to the empty cemetery, the words that had been echoing in her mind for weeks finally spoken aloud. Elena was the good one. She spent her life helping others. I just exist. It should have been me who had the heart attack. The guilt felt like it was eating her alive from the inside. Elena had died because of Camilla's negligence, her failure to insist on preventive testing. Elena had died young and alone in a hospital bed, never getting the chance to marry or have children or become the head nurse she had dreamed of being. Camilla began having panic attacks in the weeks following Elena's death. She would wake up in the middle of the night, gasping for air, convinced she was having a heart attack like Elena. The genetic test showed she carried the same gene that had likely killed her sister. Every chest pain, every moment of shortness of breath, every time her heart skipped a beat sent Camilla into spirals of terror. She made an appointment with a cardiologist, Dr. Robert Chun, who happened to be Dr. Sarah Chin's husband. When he learned about Elena's case and saw Camilla's genetic test results, he immediately started her on cholesterol-lowering medication and ordered a complete cardiac workup. "Your heart shows some signs of early damage," Dr. Chin explained after reviewing her test results. "Nothing like what Elena experienced, but we need to monitor you very closely. The medication should help prevent progression, and we'll do regular checkups to catch any changes early." The irony wasn't lost on Camilla. She was receiving exactly the kind of preventive care that could have saved Elena's life. If they had both been tested and monitored years ago, Elena would still be alive, still be making coffee every morning, still be comforting scared children at the hospital. "Dr. Chun," Camilla said during one of these appointments, "do you think Elena would still be alive if we had known about the genetic condition earlier?" Dr. Chun was quiet for a moment, weighing his words carefully. Early intervention makes a significant difference in outcomes for people with familial hypercholesterolemia. With proper medication and monitoring, most people with this condition can live normal, healthy lives. It's impossible to know for certain what would have happened in Elena's specific case, but yes, early detection and treatment likely would have prevented her heart attack. The confirmation of what Camilla already knew felt like a death sentence of its own. Elena had died because of Camilla's failure. There was no other way to interpret the medical facts. Camilla quit her job and spent most of her days in the apartment, unable to face the world outside. Elena's room remained untouched, her belongings exactly as she had left them. Sometimes Camilla would sit in Elena's chair at the kitchen table, drinking coffee from Elena's favorite mug, trying to feel some connection to her sister. Their mother called frequently, worried about Camilla's emotional state. Maria had returned to Mexico for Elena's funeral and was dealing with her own grief while working extra hours to pay off the debt from her trip to see Elena in the hospital. "Mija, you need to take care of yourself," Maria said during one of their nightly phone calls. "Elena wouldn't want you to stop living because she's gone." But that was exactly what Camilla had done, stopped living. She barely ate, rarely slept, and spent her days replaying every conversation she'd ever had with Elena, looking for signs she should have noticed, warnings she should have heeded. The panic attacks became more frequent and severe. One evening, Camilla was convinced she was dying and called 911. The paramedics found her hyperventilating and shaking, her heart racing so fast the monitors couldn't get an accurate reading. At the emergency room, the same hospital where Elena had died, Dr. Sarah Chun happened to be on duty. She recognized Camilla immediately and provided both medical care and gentle counseling. "Camilla, you're having panic attacks, not heart problems," Dr. Chin explained after running tests. "Your heart is actually very healthy, especially with the medication you're taking. But grief can cause physical symptoms that feel very real and very frightening. I keep thinking I'm going to die like Elena did," Camilla confessed. "I keep thinking this is my punishment for not taking better care of her." Dr. Chun sat down beside Camilla's hospital bed, speaking with the same gentle authority she had used during Elena's illness. "Camilla, what happened to Elena was not your fault. Familial hypercholesterolemia is a genetic condition. You didn't give it to her, and you couldn't have prevented her from inheriting it. The genetic testing wasn't standard practice when Elena was younger. Most people only get tested after a family member has a cardiac event. But if you had insisted, Elena might still be alive. Or she might have died from something else entirely. You can't spend your life torturing yourself with what-if scenarios. Elena wouldn't want that for you." Dr. Chun referred Camilla to a grief counselor, a woman named Dr. Maria Santos, who specialized in helping people process sudden losses and survivor guilt. The first several sessions were difficult, with Camilla barely able to speak through her tears and panic. "Tell me about Elena," Dr. Santos said during their third meeting. "What was she like as a person?" Camilla found herself talking about Elena's laugh, her terrible cooking skills, her habit of singing in the shower, her devotion to her young patients. As she spoke, Elena became more than just a victim of preventable disease. She became a full person again in Camilla's memory, someone who had lived joyfully and purposefully, not someone who had simply died tragically. "Elena sounds like someone who brought a lot of happiness to the world," Dr. Santos observed. "Do you think she would want her death to destroy your life?" "No," Camilla admitted. "Elena always said life was too short to waste on regrets." "Then, how do you think you could honor her memory in a way that would make her proud?" It was a question that haunted Camilla for days. How could she honor Elena's memory when she felt responsible for Elena's death? How could she move forward when moving forward felt like leaving Elena behind? The answer came unexpectedly during a visit to Elena's former workplace. Camilla had gone to the pediatric ward to collect Elena's personal belongings from her locker. Family photos, a spare sweater, the small succulent plant Elena had kept on her desk. "Camilla," a small voice called out as she walked down the hospital corridor. She turned to see Marcus, the little boy who had given her the plastic dinosaur, running toward her with his mother following behind. "Hi, Marcus," Camilla said, kneeling down to his level. "How are you feeling?" "I'm good, but I miss Nurse Elena. The other nurses are nice, but they don't know about dinosaurs like she did." Marcus's mother, Jennifer, looked apologetic. "I am sorry. Marcus has been asking about Elena since we heard about her death. He doesn't quite understand why she's not here anymore." Looking at Marcus's hopeful face, Camilla made a decision that would change the direction of her grief. "Marcus, would you like me to tell you more stories about dinosaur nurses? Elena taught me all about them." Marcus's face lit up with excitement, and Camilla found herself creating a story about a brave Triceratops nurse who helped baby dinosaurs feel better when they were sick. As she spoke, she could almost hear Elena's voice joining hers, adding the kind of details that had made Elena such a beloved caregiver. After Marcus and his mother left, Sandra Vega approached Camilla in the hallway. "That was beautiful," she said. "You have Elena's gift for connecting with children. I was just trying to honor her memory. What if that could be more than just a one-time thing?" Sandra asked thoughtfully. "We've been struggling since Elena died. The children miss her so much, and we haven't been able to find someone with her special touch. Have you ever thought about volunteering here?" The suggestion seemed impossible at first. How could Camilla work in a place where Elena had been so beloved, where every child and every room would remind her of what she had lost? But as the days passed, the idea grew more appealing. Elena had found purpose and joy in caring for sick children. Maybe Camilla could find healing in continuing that work, in being the kind of person Elena would have wanted her to become. She started with small commitments, reading stories to children during long hospital stays, helping with art therapy sessions, assisting nurses with non-medical tasks. The work was emotionally challenging, especially when she encountered children with serious illnesses who reminded her of Elena's patience. But there was also something healing about being useful again, about making even a small difference in the lives of scared, sick children. Every smile she coaxed from a young patient, every moment of distraction she provided during a difficult procedure felt like a tribute to Elena's memory. "Elena would be so proud of you," Sandra told her after Camilla had been volunteering for 2 months. "You're bringing her same compassion and creativity to this work." Slowly, Camilla began to understand that honoring Elena's memory didn't require destroying her own life with guilt. It required living the kind of life Elena would have wanted for her, a life full of purpose and service and love. She kept the plastic T-Rex that Marcus had given her on her bedside table, a reminder that Elena's influence continued through the people she had touched. The children Elena had cared for would grow up, remembering a nurse who had made them feel brave and valued. Some of them might even choose careers in healthcare themselves, inspired by Elena's example. 6 months after Elena's death, Camilla stood in the hospital corridor where she had first seen Marcus after the memorial service. She was wearing scrubs now, having enrolled in a nursing program to formalize her volunteer work. The program would take 2 years to complete, but Camilla had found her calling in continuing Elena's mission of caring for sick children. "It should have been me," she whispered, but the words meant something different now. Not that she should have died instead of Elena, but that she should have been living the kind of meaningful life Elena had modeled. She should have been using her time and energy to help others, to make a difference, to honor the love Elena had shown her by passing it on to others who needed it. Elena's room at home was still largely untouched, but Camilla had made one small change. She had placed Elena's nursing school diploma on the dresser next to a photo of Elena with some of her young patients. Next to these, Camilla had placed her own acceptance letter to nursing school. The guilt would probably never completely disappear. Camilla would always wonder if she could have saved Elena's life by insisting on genetic testing earlier. But she had learned to carry that guilt alongside determination to live in a way that honored Elena's legacy of love and service. Elena's coffee mug still sat in the kitchen cabinet, waiting. But now Camilla used it sometimes when she made her morning coffee, feeling connected to her sister through the simple ritual they had shared for so many years. "Good morning, little sister," Camilla would say to Elena's photo as she sipped her coffee. "Today I'm going to try to be the person you always believed I could be." Elena was gone, but her influence lived on in every child Camilla comforted, every story she told, every moment of fear she helped transform into courage. In learning to honor Elena's memory, Camilla had found her own purpose and, slowly, a way to live with the weight of loss and love that would always be part of her story.